What's up, my friends? I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and I just accomplished a thing. Well, my wife and I accomplished it together. We watched all the way through all 6 seasons of NBC's Community. I'm telling you, seasons 1 through 3 of Community are comedic gold. It's fantastic. It's a whole bunch of very funny people in their prime, great writing. And in the process of that, you get to know some peripheral characters to the story. And one of them is this kid named Magnitude who goes to this community college. And he really doesn't do anything or contribute anything. And Magnitude's catchphrase, everybody who has watched this show is yelling it already, and you can just collect your smart points because you were right, is pop, pop. That's what he yells when he's on screen every time. It's pop, pop, every time. It's ridiculous. It's a riff on catchphrases. It's stupid. It's vacuous. And yet, even as it riffs on catchphrases, it still works on my wife and I, because anytime we see the word magnitude anywhere, even if it's very subtle, and we're in like a formal situation or somewhere where we really can't say much of anything out loud or make a fuss, we'll still under our breath be like, pop, pop. And then fist bump real quick, church or at a wedding. We saw a motorhome drive by the other day, and the brand name was Magnitude. Pop, pop! We were both on it immediately. It's so dumb, but it so works. And the point is that there's something really valid about the idea of a calling card. One simple thing that you associate with this one other thing. And it raises the question, 18 chapters into the book of Matthew, what would you say is supposed to be the calling card of the kingdom citizen? Not based on what we heard in youth group or saw in a Christian movie or heard on a Christian radio station or got told you're supposed to think by political talking heads who are vaguely religious. Like, none of that stuff. Just block it all out for a minute and only think about the 18 chapters of Matthew we have looked at together over the last 11 gajillion episodes of conversation that we've had. Based on that, what would you say is supposed to be the calling card of the kingdom citizen according to Jesus? I'm going to give you a second. I'm just stalling right now. I'm letting it breathe. Okay, I would say that the calling card, the pop of Christians according to the first 18 chapters of Matthew, still stalling to give you time, is forgiveness. That's the thing. That is the gesture on which the entire possibility of a relationship in right standing between the all-knowing creator God and flawed, finite, broken people like us, that is the one gesture upon which the whole thing is predicated. Because God is perfect and infinite, and not just in terms of naughty and nice. God is maximum, infinite, sideways 8. People are, well, anything but sideways 8. We're finite. We have limited capacities. We only be in one place at one time. Think about one or maybe 2 things at one time if you're really, really smart. We do learn and change and evolve. God doesn't learn and change and evolve. He's always known all the things. We're always learning new things. God never screws things up. We're constantly screwing things up. In order for a relationship to happen between these two parties, before you even get into naughty, nice, sin, good behavior, bad behavior kind of stuff, there's got to be some gigantic bridging of the gap between these two sets of capacities. And so when we think of forgiveness, we tend to think of it first and foremost as you wronged me. Now I release the debt of what you owe me from you. And so now we can have a restored relationship because I forgive you, as one day you will need to forgive me. But if we just think about it in terms of the capacities of God and the capacities of people, in essence, the condescension of God, not in the bad way, but in the good way, the stooping down of God to the level of finite humanity is, by definition, necessarily an act of grace, making an accommodation for our shortcomings and failures. And as a result of that, the expectation then is if you have received that from God, which is a massive amount of forgiveness, of grace, of patience, then absolutely necessarily that has to be the first thing that the person who's received that forgiveness must give away. You have to give it away. Now, the question is that your ticket into being a kingdom citizen, that you did a bunch of forgiving and now God's like, all right, good enough, then I will give you my forgiveness? Well, no, it really can't be that. His forgiveness has to be the first move. Again, just logically, it has to be the first move. But there's some sort of test here that we see not just in Matthew, but all over the Bible, that suggests that if you've received the grace and forgiveness of God, but don't want to give it away to others, as we talked about over the last 2 episodes, something is wrong. It could be wrong at many different places, I suppose, in the process, but something broke. If you got forgiven $312 million metaphorical dollars and you can't forgive a few bucks between you and a peer. And so it is that we run over to 1 John. Well, I was going to say 1 John chapter 1, but really it's all of 1 John. And in 1 John, we get multiple repetitions of this same threefold test. And the threefold test of 1 John is right orthodoxy, a right understanding of who God is and what God has done, right love or right orientation toward other people, that true kingdom citizen can't help but give away the love they have received from God, and then obedience. The true kingdom citizen can't help but want to do the things that their king, who they bend the knee to voluntarily, has told them to do. So we get this threefold test from John, but all of it seems to flow from give away what you've received. You've been given truth, give away truth. You've been given the grace of God, well, give away that grace of God to others. You've been given the love of God, give away that love of God to others. And it occurs to me that I'm talking a lot about 1 John, but the same guy, John, also wrote the book that has his name on it, just John. And maybe the most famous verse articulating what we're talking about today is John 13:35, by this will all men know that you're my disciples if you love one another. Same exact concept. It's all over the New Testament. It's all over the teachings of Jesus. Therefore, it's no surprise that when we get to the fourth of the 5 big speeches around which the book of Matthew is structured, the one that is about the community life, what it is to be a follower of Jesus, a kingdom citizen in community, it's no surprise that what we get here is an emphasis on what you've been given, give away. And it's also no surprise that we get a couple of stern warnings that suggest that if you are not giving away what you've been given, like, what the heck, dude? The chapter ends with this warning at the end of that big parable about the unmerciful servant. It says, "This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart." Again, as difficult as this is for me to hear, for you to hear, because we've got some really legitimate gripes with other people, because we've all been really wronged. Some of you have been really wronged. But the reality is that even though reconciliation may not always be possible for the kingdom citizen, forgiveness is a mandatory, permanent state of being. And to cut ourselves off from that because our wronging that we endured was just so very, very bad is to saw off the branch on which we sit. It's to saw off the branch of forgiveness that connects us to the tree of God, and we do so at our own peril. And I don't think Jesus' warning at the end of chapter 18 is to be taken lightly. No, the take-home for me of this community life discourse, and really so much of what Jesus has had to say so far about what it looks like to be a kingdom citizen, is that priority one, our calling card, our pop, is that we are forgiving. Forgiving when it's not trendy, forgiving when it's not cool, forgiving when it's not easy, forgiving when it costs us something in terms of time or reputation or money or even dignity or a sense that we really are owed something. But I mean, what about all the stuff that isn't the calling card of the Christian then? All the things that Christians of different expressions tend to get really excited about, political stuff, stances on this behavior or that behavior, or this hot button issue, or abstinences from consuming this thing or that thing. And maybe all of that's good and fine, and maybe all of everybody's opinions are just great and super, and they would all make society better, and it's how things ought to be. But no matter how passionately somebody might feel about all of those opinions or even biblical ideas, it isn't the thing that in Matthew, that in John, that in 1 John, that in the words of Jesus are described as being the calling card of the Christian. Once again, the calling card, the pop of the kingdom citizen, is this spirit of continual, humble, stubborn forgiveness, no matter what. I want to say thanks to everybody who supports the program at patreon.com/the TMBH You are the reason that we get to have conversations like this. And thank you to everybody who doesn't kick in as well. You don't have to. Come on, I'm just glad you're here. Thank you for being a part of this, everybody. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.